playing with your leg.
It's going to be one of those rides, isn't it?
It's going to be one of those rides. Be ready for it. Okay, and we can head off.
Yeehaw.
So I'll begin with my great beginning. Welcome.
Sure.
Welcome to Hypnosis in Action.
Thank you.
My name is Stephen Anderson, and we are going Smartie trekking. I am with Richard Chun. Richard, you're a personal trainer.
I am, yep.
You're a coach.
Yes.
You're all of that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's start by just talking about you and not about your business.
Sure.
Where'd you begin?
Yeah. So I started my life in New Zealand. I was born in New Zealand, Christchurch, and to a nurseryman, and he's Chinese. I had a Chinese upbringing, so I was brought up in market gardening. And
can you describe what is meant by market gardening?
So I lived in an environment whereby we had market gardens, so plants, acreages of plants that we used to tend to and look after, and we used to sell those plants to the general public. And so my early childhood was basically just chores, just doing the work around the market gardens and helping out and being involved in the family business.
Okay.
And so that was really important.
So a little bit of slave labour.
Mate, it's a Chinese thing, I think, mate. It's the Asian upbringing, mate. So that's why you have kids.
So yeah. Was your dad an immigrant too?
Yeah. So he was second generation. So my grandfather, Chun was an immigrant to New Zealand for the early gold rushes down the South Island. Didn't kind of pan out for him. And he ended up getting involved in market gardening, and as a consequence of having to need more workers, I think my father was one of 19 children, and they started the earliest market gardens in New Zealand, which is Zenith, and they started that out in New Zealand and branched out right throughout. So that was my kind of upbringing, is being involved in that. So him being second generation, and me being third, with a lot of really old aunties and uncles that are in their 90s now. So that was how I was kind of raised around it initially. And my mum was she was Māori descent, so in New Zealand, Indigenous, and she taught me other things about life. So
your mum 100% Māori?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I can't say 100%. There's probably something else in there, but she raised me differently. So I was deeply raised within the Māori culture as well. Mm-hmm. So really getting that diverse split of exposure to different types of cultures, and they are one and the same because it's all about togetherness, but they just function differently in day-to-day life. So so you're saying the Chinese culture and the Māori culture are both about togetherness, are both about family? Absolutely. So they're both about togetherness. I think that the way they operate are completely different. So the Māori side are very easy, laid back, and a bit more chilled out about day-to-day, whereas the Chinese are a little bit more progressive and like, let's kind of move forward. We have business, we have to we have to look after the generations to come, whereas Māori are a little bit more set in the day, like more present. So I've kind of got that that paradigm all the time between the now and the later.
Okay. Yeah. Look, I was listening to a podcast, a book, I don't know, something the other day that was talking about a study where here in Australia, actually a speech I heard last weekend, here in Australia, depending on your name, depends on whether your CV or your resume gets passed on to the next step for interview and thing like that. And it was a direct comparison between an anglicised name and an Asian name, and then somewhere in the middle, where, like you have an Anglo first name and an Asian sounding second name.
Absolutely.
Is that your name, or is that something you've chosen to take on because of that undercurrent that's in our society?
No, it's definitely my name. It's definitely it was my given name. So I've had it all my life, and obviously it's actually has had its advantages. So, and it's completely on what you base on. So it's really funny. Sometimes I'll go to the doctors, and they come out looking for a Mr. Chun, and they'll walk to the nearest Asian dude. I'm saying, mate, I'm here. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of funny, and I actually would agree. That there's a little bit of mystique to it. You know what I mean? Like you get curious about, okay, well, this person sounds Chinese, but he doesn't look it. You know what I mean? So I think it creates a little bit of curiosity about who I am and what I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You're in business for yourself now. Is that
Sure.
the way it's always been? Because you were brought up as a business person.
It's really interesting. I think I did have an entrepreneur hat on at a very young age. Just being raised in that kind of environment as well. So my first real entrepreneurial kind of endeavour was just literally working within our own garden, taking all the beans and all the vegetables and then taking it to the front of our house in a wheelbarrow and then waving down all the people that were driving past and saying, come buy my beans, come buy my potatoes. And for $2 a bag, that was my first kind of my business endeavour. That was my first one, and that was between the ages of 6 and 8. And then I carried that on just to make some pocket money.
Okay. Did your parents encourage that, or was that just your idea?
No, Dad told me you had to earn your way, and if you wanted spending money, then this is the way to go about doing it. And so I didn't get paid for the chores, but I got paid for the effort that I put into things. So Dad would obviously help me do the gardens, build the gardens, and then I'd go ahead and harvest and take it out to market and do my best to attract people in. So that's been with me.
Okay, so paint a picture for me. What was your home growing up?
My home was... my mum and dad had split up by the time I was 8.
Right.
And so it was very much just with my father. My father was unwell for a period of time, and he was battling heart issues as well as asthma issues. So I was a middle child. My older siblings had moved out and I had a younger brother, and so I had a fairly high responsibility within the house. It was myself, my younger brother and Dad, and so I developed this sense of responsibility around raising my younger brother, but also looking after my father. And so I think my dad trained me in that way too. So it was very much he taught me skills, a lot of skills to be able to look after myself and the people around me. Mm-hmm. And so the household was really good, and was always, my dad was a very charismatic person, and we always had people around, and I always had my friends around, so it was actually a really good upbringing. Yeah. But underlining it had this high sense of responsibility, and I think from a young age I had this kind of affinity with death pretty early on, because I lost my older sister when I was 3, and my grandmother when I was 6 months later.
How old was your older sister?
She was 13, so she passed from a brain tumour, and I was 3 at the time, and my parents said I had a lot of similar characteristics to her as well. Mm-hmm. And then my grandmother passed away. She lived with us 6 months later, so she passed on. And then so I always had this fear, and then so my fear was I was going to lose my dad from the age of the earliest I can remember. And so I just did my best to learn what I could from him and just do what he needed me to do. And then he passed away at 13. So from 13 onwards, I was given the choice to either go and live with my mother or stay here and make a life of your own. And I thought, okay, I'll just stick it out. I had friends and where I was, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to build my own life. So it was at that time where I thought, I'll continue with school, I'll get a job, I'll get a house, and I'll make it happen. And so from the ages of 13 through to 18, I worked in the morning before school and after school, and studied at night and got myself through school, and to the age of 18. And
okay, so that's 5 full years where most of us, it's the cruisiest time of our life.
Not cruisy. It was not cruisy because I was up at 4 in the morning and I was at work by 6. I'd work till 7:38 in a butcher doing meat packing, go to school all day, come back and then start my afternoon shifts at 4 o'clock, and then work through to 9. And then I'd knock off and do whatever I had to do after work, just to catch up with my study, and then go back and do it again.
Okay. What part of the world were you in?
I was in New Zealand.
You're in New Zealand?
In New Zealand. And live in. So it's a small town of about 20,000 people at the time. Yeah. And look, I can say that as hard as it was, it never changed a thing, because I am a result of who of those experiences came as a part of it. But it was hard and it was tough, but I loved it at the same time. It's like being in business for yourself, right? Because you don't have to answer to anyone, you answer to yourself. And so with that, I put myself through school, and anyway, decided to come over here after that.
Okay.
So
Okay, so you moved here pretty much straight after you left school?
Yeah, mate, I wanted a break from it all. I was kind of pretty burnt out by the time I was 18. And so I came over. My sister convinced me to come over and spend a bit of time in Australia, figure out what you want to do. And so I came over, and I just, to be honest, I just partied for 3 or 4 years. Just kind of enjoyed. That was my cruisy years. So I just got to enjoy life and, you know, take it easy. And, you know, worked in a bar, managed nightclubs and bars throughout Brisbane, and just enjoyed that play time.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it came to a point in my life where I had a few experiences that kind of kicked me in the butt a little bit, mostly relationship based. So being involved in relationships that they didn't turn out the best, and so I thought to myself, okay, well, I'm just going to make a few adjustments to my life now and start working towards a bigger game. And I went and worked for a Telstra company at the time, which was Crazy John's, and I worked my way through the ranks and ended up as the estate sales manager for 6 years. And so I was at that, by the time I was 28, I was pretty well paid, and, you know, and had a good stable income and doing really, really well. Started investing in property, and buying up, trying to get to 10 properties by the time I was 30.
Did you get that?
No, I bailed out at about 3 it was, because GFC hit, mate. I was overextended. Yeah. I was, you know, all the things that you do, mate. Overextended, and wasn't making enough money to finance anything else. And I thought, okay, cool, this is going to hurt. GFC hit. Had to start to simplify the portfolio, and you know, by 33, I was burnt out again. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so, at 30 years old, I decided to start making tracks into doing my own thing. And personal training was something, or, you know, just personal well-being and personal training is something I wanted to do.
Yeah, okay, personal training was something you wanted to do. But tell me about your property time, the time you spent doing that. That was running up to the GFC, and I know I have a similar story. I think I was at 7 houses when the GFC hit.
It was ugly, wasn't it? God bless you.
It was, well, you know, it's I've still got a few of them.
Still hold on to a few, yeah, look, it was just, I actually went into partnership to try and improve my, you know, loan capacity. So I went in and I was buying houses, and we're renovating. So buying, renovating, and you know, putting, you know, just getting the rental return on them. And everything was going really, really well. And it just got to a point where, as I said, I kind of was working super hard at my job, but everything I was doing was going into leveraging new properties. And at that stage, I think we're on a 12%. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? 12% interest rates, and I think that was a good rate. And so, you know, we're shelling out a huge amount of money just to be able to maintain it. And it actually got to a point where the partnerships, it didn't really fail, but we outgrew each other, and we wanted to go in different directions. And so I wanted to, when GFC hit, I wanted to consolidate more, and they wanted to keep pushing. Right. And I said, no, I'm not in, it's too high risk now, and I'm the one that's at most risk here. And if my job goes as a result of the GFC, then, you know, I need to be conscious of what's going to happen. So we decided to sell down, split the properties. I ended up with one, and I actually recently sold that a couple of years ago to developers, and we developed that site. So thankfully I'm in a, you know, a property that I love. But I learned that at that stage of my life, it just, I felt it was my urge to make money. It was, I think it was the universe's lesson to me to say that making money is not everything, and as a result of what you've done over the last 8 years during my career and during my push to that outcome, nothing became of it, and I burned my relationships during that time. Right. I burnt all my relationships, and what I mean by burnt is that, like, I didn't break them, I just burnt them. I just didn't spend time with people. I was busy. I was doing what I was doing, and I just become shelled in this, you know, this one-track mind. There's no flexibility to it, and I just got caught in that, and I learned as a result of that mindset that the fixed mindset didn't work out for me in terms of the goal. And my health went with it as well, because I was too focused on working, and I didn't train anywhere as much as I should have at the time. I didn't. Is that something you were doing before that, and in your part of years rise through your rise through sales in the phone industry? It was a part of my my philosophy, because I knew that it helped me perform. Right. It helped me perform. Healthy body, healthy mind. Yeah, correct. And I'd always been involved in martial arts to some degree, because it's progressive and it's physical, and it helps me get out of my mind and into my body, because I have a tendency to be very mind driven. Yes. And so to escape the mind and get into the body just gave me a sense of freedom and renewed me every time. renew me every time I went back into battle. I was able to renew my energy and come back revitalized to be able to perform again. And so I knew that was there, but when I got all consumed by my drive to succeed financially, I dropped the ball in terms of my well-being and my health. And so when I look at life in three buckets anyway, so those 3 buckets are vitality, connection and contribution. And so I dropped the ball on vitality and I dropped the ball on connection, and as a result I had no contribution to myself and what I was doing. And so I just didn't have that balance anymore, and so I felt out of balance. And I believe your body, it shows you, it's the canvas. It shows you how you're feeling on the inside. You know, it brings to the surface of how you're feeling on the inside. And so I was walking around, about 100 kilos and, super overweight and super unwell and super unfit. And so that was the biggest impact during that period of time. That was my health and well-being and my relationships with others.
Was there a breaking point? Was there something that said to you, now it's time for me to turn? Or was it gradual?
No, there was a breaking point, and the breaking point was the friction of GFC, the continued, the chronic stress coming from my career, and the inability to find a way through it. And so the cracking point was obviously being in my head, like head against the wall. This isn't the change I'm looking for, isn't going to happen. But the moment that I recognized that my senior managers, so my senior leadership team, were no better off than I was right there, I saw my future. Okay.
Can you expand on that a bit?
Yeah. So basically, I thought to myself, well, the next step up for me is the national sales role.
Yes.
And my national sales manager at the time wasn't who I wanted to be.
Yeah.
In any way, shape, or form. And so what was happening for me is I just saw my life being demonstrated differently, and that if I continued on the path of which I am on, I will end up exactly where he is. And so I just saw it as, okay, this is a turning point. If I don't want to be like that and I want to be someone different, then I need to make a move. And so at 30 years old, I just decided, okay, for the next 3 years, I'm going to work out how to move on. And that's what I did for my exit strategy. 3 years, worked on it and got myself out of what I was doing and moved out of that industry. And it was huge. The other part to what I would say was that was the friction that caused me to move, but the inspiration that caused me to really take action was the fact that as a young kid, all I ever wanted to be was a dad. That was and so one of my primary drivers was to be a dad.
Here we are back
it's
to
coming
the family
back.
thing.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's coming back to family, and so
is that bred into you? You think that's just because that's the way that you lived, or is this something?
No, I was born that way.
You're born that way.
100%. I remember as a baby.
So this is an evolutionary thing.
It is, mate. It is an evolutionary thing. I came into the world with my eyes wide open, and I knew things when I came through, and I knew things, and I knew that my source of life is going to come from life. My source of what I'm learning about now, and the thing that I'm most proud of that I'm working proactively on, is this understanding of love and actually compassion and actually having more of it, because that's probably the biggest thing I say that distinguishes between the Chinese and the multiculture is there's a little bit more expression of love within the multiculture, but within the expression of the Chinese culture, you play out your love in service. So you're doing things in service of others, so you're doing things for others, and that was the expression of love. That's why my dad was never loving with me, but he taught me everything. He taught me skills, and he taught me things that will help me later in life. There's an old Chinese proverb which goes on about the father and the son that are digging the cave through the mountain, and they were just digging, and all the villagers thought they were nuts. And they're like, why are you digging this cave through the mountain? It's never ending. You know what I mean? And the response by the father and the son was, well, I'm just digging it a bit further for my son, and his son's son, and his son's son. And so there's this belief that it's this collective work ethic, which is so relevant now in the Chinese culture, this collective effort of generations and generations of work that's accumulated over time to give you a sense of security and purpose and direction. It's a Chinese thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's so dominant in the Chinese upbringing, and so that was the dominant marker for my initial 30 years. And now as I come into the other half of my lifetime, I'm getting a more of a recollection of the live in the now, the sense of presence, and
okay, can I pull you up on
sure.
that? I don't know your age because you're in one of those nationalities where you never know
you
their age.
You got to guess. Sure.
Yeah. So I'm picking you still under 40.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stats say that we're going to live to 100. Okay. Anyone under 40 today is going to live to 100. So you haven't reached that other half of your life yet.
Yeah.
Just
I get
saying.
it. No, that's
just
great.
Saying. Okay.
No, that's a really good point, and actually, I was taught from a young age that you go through spiritual ages. From 1 to 7, you're in your early ages of your spiritual journey, and then you end up at 30s, 28s to 30s, 33. You're starting to become an adolescent. So we're certainly, I'm a long way from where we've got to be, but at the same time, exactly where I need to be.
Yeah,
it's cool. But yeah.
Okay, so what's next?
Yeah.
Or actually, no, what's now? You turned at 30 and said, I've got 3 years to come out of this.
Yeah.
And that in itself is interesting.
Yeah.
Because so many people will just jump ship.
Yeah.
And find themselves floundering.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
You set a goal.
Yeah. It's actually really important that you raise that point, because to come back to the question of like what was the inspiration. The inspiration for me to actually move forward was actually I wanted to be the example for my children and show them the example of like making your own decisions in life, and that's all I wanted to be, and that was with your health, and that was with your wealth. All the important things.
So at 30 years of age, before you had children, you decided to set these goals.
Yes.
And one of the things in your mind was, I want to set an example for my unborn children.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, let's go.
And
let's
so,
go
exactly, mate. It's pretty deep, right? So I thought, okay, because these are the only things I'm going to leave behind in the world. And so I needed to start doing the self-work. And you mentioned before, like, I was shitty. I didn't want to stay in that job for 3 years. And for me to actually be able to stay there, I needed to make it not a problem. And the only way I could make it not a problem was actually to use the stimulus of adversity of that 3-year period to grow. And so that's where I did most of my self-development, most of my personal well-being development. And I just took on mentors, coaches, read a lot of books. I did things that helped me to grow and develop during that period of time. And interestingly enough, though, during those 3 years is when I pretty much reshaped my whole sales team, re-delivered a new way of selling and building trust in relationships with your customers. And by the time I left, our states and my team won the CanStar Award for the best customer service. And so that was a huge accomplishment during that period of time, and I was able to move from that experience and go, you know what, I think I've earned my white belt, I'm good to go. and so then I basically took on I went into personal training with the idea that, okay, well, if I'm going to really take care of my health, I'm going to be it. And so
during that 3 years, did you change that side of you as well?
Absolutely. It was a slow evolution. So I started to do all the things to start building me towards that. I did the study, I did a lot of the practice, and not perfect, by the way. Absolutely not perfect. But I think that's also the ground, the reference points that help me.
Practice makes permanent, doesn't it?
Agreed. It also gives me a high level of relatability to the people I deal with on a day-to-day, because they're also like in that grind and they're kind of doing things at a high stress level all the time, and so that part of my life is helping me develop even now. So moving into PT.
Into PT. So I'm told that I don't have a filter. So if I may say, you picked a shit of a business.
I know.
It is as competitive as anything that's out there.
Yeah.
And generally, again, horribly chauvinistically, is overrun with really pretty young women.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you.
And
I'm in agreement. I didn't pick it as a business.
You didn't pick it?
No, I picked it as a path.
Right.
It was a health and wellbeing path for me. It was a selfish choice. It was a health and wellbeing choice for me. And like, if I looked at it from a business perspective, I never would have done it. Do you know what I mean? And even then, like the last 7 years that I've been involved in this particular industry, I actually have been looking at more of as a career hiatus and just focusing on myself, health and wellbeing.
Okay.
And it's turned recently though, because I've actually taken a great interest in it, and I actually am starting to see all of the areas that this industry is just defaulting. It's not working.
No.
You know, and it's exactly what you pointed out. The industry is just full of just unrealistic outcomes and just unpractical solutions.
Well, it's very well known that the industry survives on the people that don't actually come.
Yeah.
You know?
No, 100%. 100%.
You're taking money from people who aren't there, so you can underperform quite happily.
Yeah, and I think that, and look, and even in the last 7 years, I've started to see, you know, the clients become more savvy with regards to how they approach their own well-being, and especially the way that they pick their coaches and their PTs. You know, they're not just going to pick them up and think that they're going to solve the problem for me anymore. They know there's a whole heap of self-work involved, and they're looking for the right type of people to help them develop that self-work and those skill sets to be able to make it an ongoing thing. And that's what I'm saying. So now the discussion that I'm starting to have, I'm having the discussions whereby I'm at the forefront of developing, you know, high performance well-being habits. And as you know, habits are an outcome of doing things repetitively over time, frequency. And so that's why I say it's not a fast process, it's an ongoing process.
Okay, so the basis of this little show I do is the belief that those habits are formed generally before the age of 7.
Right.
And you continue with the habits that were right for you before the age of 7, even though they're no longer right for you now.
Yeah.
And you're talking about easy habits to change, whether they be exercise.
Yeah.
I'm talking about habits that aren't so easy to change, and that is the belief that one has in oneself.
Got it.
And that is a belief that was given to you when you were much early. Now, you are in a incredibly lucky situation that you were given the beliefs of a culture that you've grown up with, and put you in that place, whether it be hardworking, whether it be family, whether it be the need for close relationships to be able to excel and win in what you're doing. Sorry, at some point during this, I'm supposed to turn around and say how you are hypnotizing yourself every day, right?
Yeah,
because that's my mantra. Is that's what we do every day. We hypnotize ourselves to do the things we do, and it becomes a habit within ourselves. That is sometimes very good for us, and from what I can see from you, is very good for you. Where many of us have habits that we do every day that aren't good for us at all. We just do it because that's what we've always done.
Correct. And I think that's where my upbringing was so unique in the way that it was so valuable. The work ethic that I was developing. Work ethic's always something that I've had with me, and even doing the work that I didn't want to do, especially doing the work that I didn't want to do, and because that's always where I knew where the results were was in what I didn't want to do. I guess coming back to your point, and you know the whole habit things, is that I actually see this undoing most play out in a high stress environment, and I create high stress environments all the time when I'm working with professionals.
High stress environments.
I do. I create high stress, and the thing is high stress or stress isn't actually the problem. The problem nowadays is chronic high stress. It's the repetitiveness of high stress, and so the people that I work with don't know how to release the valve. They don't know how to put the off switch on. They don't even know if there is an off switch, and so they end up in doing the same behaviours over and over again. A big part of my role is to I'm the short circuit. I come in and I utilise the platform of exercise and well-being to short circuit everything else. So my idea is that I'm bringing high-performing habits to high-performing people in the workplace to be able to short circuit everything within the paradigm of exercise and well-being, because the skill sets and the guiding principles are the same within exercise as they are within your workplace. They're exactly the same, and with everything, you know, there's just going to be guiding principles that'll work across everything. You know, like a big one for me is humility. Is you know, I coin the term humility is the new strong, and that's the ability to look at yourself and say you're not all that, mate. You've got to be able to be open and take on learning where you can. And so humility is just such an important virtue. If you can take it and value it and utilize it within your own life, then you'll realize that there's opportunity to grow. It's just one little thing, you know. And I deal with people all the time that know everything about what they're doing and getting nowhere in terms of our health and well-being. You know what I mean? They know they're the best at what they do. They know what they're doing in exercise. They know what to do with food, but they don't get the result. And that's because they're not owning up to things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're not owning up to responsibilities that they have to make around their own well-being. That's my job.
That's your job.
Yeah, I short circuit that thinking in much the same way you should.
Well, I was just going to say, you do understand that we're doing the same job.
We do the same thing.
We do the same thing.
Yeah, we just have different platforms, right? We have different ways of doing it. Yeah. So, I think I think one of the empowering things about utilizing health and well-being is that it does kick out so many benefits. If you get it right and you're able to balance out your own, like your exercise, your fitness, your strength, it kicks out a lot of outcomes. There's a lot of benefits. You know, longevity is a big one. Cognitive function is a big one. Hormonal balance is a big one. So there's so many things that you can do with just exercise and nutrition alone. It's a high leverage factor. It's one thing that will take care of 5 other things. It will take all your worries away. So, and I mentioned it before. I've been doing it all my life, right? Even when I've been doing it all my life. So, utilizing the space of well-being and exercise is a great platform because I can immediately get people out of their head and straight into their body, and they'll feel great after the fact they've spent time with me and they've forgotten all their worries. So, you know, of the world, because they've spent 1 hour contributing to their own self-development through physical well-being. And that's what they've been able to achieve. And they get a sense of achievement and accomplishment every single day that they do things like this. But yeah, I just think and I also feel that, look, this is just my feeling is that your health and well-being should be the white belt of your development. Like, this is just a precursor to your purpose. Whatever it is in life, it's just the start. If you can apply the skill sets of the virtues and the guiding principles to your health and well-being, it'll correlate to everything that you do. It'll carry over. There'll be carryover messages to everything if it's done in the right way. Delivery's the right. That's why it's not the hard and fast doesn't work anymore for long-term well-being. You've got to go frequently. You've got to do it over time. You've got to practice. You've got to develop skills. You've got to make it fun. You've got to make it interesting. You've got to get coaching. You've got to have the right environment to work around. You've got to have the right mindset. You've got to have the right tools. There's a whole range of things that need to be available to you just to get exercise and well-being right. But it's also the one thing, if you can get right, is just going to have a compounding effect on everything else.
Okay, that's interesting. 100% agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
Got to have the right mindset. Got to have the right motivation. Got to make it fun.
Yeah.
On and on and on.
Yeah, 100%.
Before we started talking today, we were discussing the normal everyday person.
Yeah.
You work with high performing
professionals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're not your normal everyday person.
Yeah.
You can get them doing that. Is there a way we can get this around to let's say your average employee of these high performing people?
It's a really great point, and it's the place where I've ended up as of now. So my company Thriive Habits is all about developing habits around the 7 primary areas. And so what I'm developing now is just a model whereby you develop a learning platform, because it's a competency thing. It's just a competency thing. So most people they start off not knowing what to do at all, and then they might go to the gym and develop a small baseline of skills, and they go, okay, no, I know what to do around that one area. Mm-hmm. And so with Thriive Habits, it's an education platform where I utilize online learning platforms and online training programs to be able to help people develop a skill.
Do people have to want to be helped?
Yes, 100%. And if they don't, that's okay. It's not my job.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm not responsible for other people's what they're not doing. I'm here to help those that are interested and are going to be proactive in their own self-rescue. I'm perfectly okay with anyone that doesn't, but if they do choose one day that they need something to help them out, then there's a way. And the way is work. You've got to put in the work, and you've got to have the right guidance, you've got to have the right monitoring systems and the right protocols in play to be able to drive that. And my 7 habits, I do have 7 habits. There's 4 primary.
Should I start calling you Stephen?
Stephen Covey,
yeah,
of course. Stephen R. Covey, mate. But
it never used to be.
Hey,
never used to be Stephen R. Covey.
Didn't it?
No.
Must be a publishing thing. I thought, add the R in. Anyway, huge influence in my life. The 7 habits of highly effective people. But with the 7 habits, it's actually, I'm going to trip you out here, but it's a completely different set of laws and rules. But the 7 habits are in, the first habit is exercise, the second habit is nutrition, the third habit is recovery, the fourth habit is mindfulness.
Recovery.
Yeah, recovery.
Talk
Sleep.
to me about.
Mate,
Right,
it's the
okay.
most that's where high performers fail the most.
Okay.
Is in their ability to focus on recovery efforts. I mentioned before high stress. The problem is not high stress because it creates a point of motivation for most people.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is chronic high stress, and where you're not releasing the valve. And so that's where you have to build in recovery efforts into your workplace and into your well-being as well.
Okay.
So part of that, the number one across all of the recovery efforts you must work towards is developing good sleep habits. That's the high leverage factor. If you can develop good sleep habits, improving the quality and the quantity of your sleep, you're automatically going to improve your overall well-being. And there's a whole range of things you can do to improve that, but that's the number one, is work towards getting, I'm not going to say a number, but I'll give you a range, which is between 7 and 9 hours per night. But the key measure is actually, do you feel well rested and energized in the morning? That's the measure.
Okay.
And so you've got, it's the...
How do you judge that? Okay, so because I'm a big faker.
Yep.
I've been faking it until I make it for 40 years.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
And I'm very, very much in a position where where everyone looks at me and believes 100% that this guy's on the top of the world.
Yep.
Whether I am or not.
Yep. Yep.
And to the point where I actually had myself believing that I was on the top of the world, whether I wasn't or not.
Got it.
How do you judge?
So how do you self-measure?
Yeah.
Yep. Look, a couple of ways. So if you're self-measuring in terms of just sleep alone, you've wake up in the morning. So I always say this, and I'm going to go back to exercise. I go have a big training session on day 1, and then see how you feel on day 2 on 6 hours sleep or 5 hours sleep, and then do it again. Have a big training session, and then wake up or try and do your best to get 8 hours sleep. There's a couple of things you need to bring into play to be able to get a good gauge of where you're at. But there's a couple of other measures I look at, is that if you're running on caffeine as well, or stimulants, if you need it first thing in the morning, you're probably not well rested.
Right.
Okay, and if you are needing the top up by 3 o'clock, you're probably not well rested either. And when I say well rested, it doesn't mean the quantity of your sleep might not be there, but your quality might be impacted. And one of the biggest things that impact the quality of your sleep is what you consume in the last 3 hours of your night.
Right.
So in terms of if it's alcohol, if it's food, or if it's whatever, but that's actually going to have a huge impact on the quality of your sleep. So you wake up feeling a little bit kind of dreary and tired, and you think back to, okay, I had a bottle of wine and pizza before I went to bed. Now your body didn't sleep.
Yeah.
Your mind probably switched off for a bit, but your body didn't. And so you've been working all night, and you wake up in the morning feeling a little bit like lethargic. So you've got to have a series of hot points or reference points to go, okay, was my quality of sleep good or was it bad? So now that you've got this reference points of, okay, wine, pizza and workout, all right, then don't do any of those things, and then go back to trying to get that 8 hours sleep and see if you feel different. See if you feel like you need that coffee in the morning, if you feel like you need the triple shot coffee in the morning, or the coffee in the afternoon at 3. See if you need those things.
Yeah. And
so you've got to work through a range of factors to start narrowing down. So by the end of it all, what we end up with is a process of narrowing down your well-being to maybe 1 or 2 things that you need to focus on.
Yeah.
And so that's my job, is to declutter, remove, take away what's not important, highlight what's valid, and then focus on those things. Okay. And just improve your habits around that 1 or 2 things.
Okay.
And so the biggest thing for high performers is sleep, is improving sleep. And so I've got a high performer. Her name is Rach, and she's amazing at what she does. But she's a lawyer, COO of a company, and she just doesn't sleep very well. So we've actually taken care of everything else. Her exercise is good, her nutrition is good, and now we're just focusing on her sleep.
Okay.
And then we develop a series of rituals for her to be able to clock off by 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, get home, she cleanses, has a shower that relaxes her, and then she goes about her normal afternoon chores, but then she works into her night routine, which is try not to narcotize. So narcotize is the TV or the iPad or the computers or social media, whatever.
Yep.
And I short circuit that with, you can narcotize if you want, but you've got to read 10 pages of a good book before you do that. And so that's the linchpin. So you're either in that split decision of picking up the iPad or turning the TV on, you've got to have the book there.
Okay.
There's got to be somewhere there to short circuit that behaviour.
Okay.
And so those are just one thing around doing how to self-manage and how to self-monitor. But there's a range. Everybody's different too. Everybody's different.
So you've got 4 primary
Yep.
things that you look at.
Yep. And then so the 4 primaries, which are around the what to do. So the what are you got to do, the things you got to focus on, and then the 3. I call it the engine, which is the 3 actions that you have to focus on. So that's the habit of mindset, the habit of environment, and the habit of action. And so so it's like the 4 habits are driven by the 3 habits.
Yeah.
So those 3 things is mindset's all about directional energy, environment is all about your immediate surrounding energy, and then action is all about releasing the potential of that energy. So it's just 3 different energy types, 3 different purposes, but you apply the idea of mindset, environment, and action to anything.
Creating an environment or putting yourself in the right environment?
Both. All of it. Anything. So environment can include the people that you associate with, the lifestyle that you live, the books that you read, the information you take in, just the habitat that you're in. So the area, the environment that you create. So if you're in an environment of high stress and high performance all the time, to improve your high performance well-being, you need to create an environment of that. And then you need to nurture that space. And the people within that space that you create that come into that space are all congruent with those belief systems as well. And so then all of a sudden you've created this bubble that exists with high performance well-being, which enables you to perform at a high level in the workplace. And so, as I said, it's a little bit engineering. So environment is so key. It's basically the best analogy I can give you is that if you try and cure the man of heroin, but then put him back into the heroin house, he ain't going to recover. No. So we've got to create a safe house, an environment where you can actually do that, and that's like the rehab home, like rehabilitation centre. You've got to do it though. So you've actually got to create your own space where you can rehab yourself away from chronic high stress, and start developing the behaviours and habits to move past all of that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. We have run up against the clock.
We have, mate.
We have.
We've done good.
Thank you.
No.
Can you do me a favour and talk into there and tell the people if they're high performing and looking for someone like you, where will they find you?
Oh, look, if you are high performing individuals and you're working and you're grinding to be successful at what you're doing, and you're looking to employ high performance habits, please check in with me on Thriive Habits. It's Thriive.
Oh, 2 I's.
Well, in reverse it's 7 in Roman numerals.
Right.
And thriivehabits.com. Check in with me and I can certainly point you in the right direction and get started.
Perfect. We're going to drive past here and come back around the block. So the next thing I'll get you to say is if you want to see this entire show.
Yep. If you want to see this entire show,
you will find that. At outbackhypnosis.com.
At outbackhypnosis.com.
Or on YouTube.
See ya.
Go, mate.
And
there we are. We're done.